everyone, and welcome to Stuck in the Catch Fence. My name is Ryan Peters. Thank you for joining us. This is the weekly show. We are ready. What are you laughing at?
Well, right, you got a brand new green screen, and you just waved a green flag. All you could see was the stick. Anyway, that's funny. Go ahead.
That's tough. What? There we go. What? No, it's not going to work. I don't know. Sorry. I didn't think that through. That's on me. See, Steve, you're not the only one that has technological issues right before we start, or even worse, during the show. So,
yeah, and you know the funny thing is that Joe manages to point you out as a butthead too, like he did me.
Hey, I'm just saying.
At least mine was off there.
You know what's worse, Steve? I bet he knew that was going to happen the entire time.
Yeah, I bet he did too.
I did. I was waiting for it. I thought it was great.
I bet he did know that.
We'll pay Go ahead, Ryan. Open up the show.
Jerk. My name's Ryan. I'm joined by Steve Risley and asshole Spillman over there. So, yeah, this is Stuck in the Catch Fence. Glad that you tune in. This is our weekly show. So we're going to break down a few things that's happening in the wide world of NASCAR. But first, I want to thank you all for being here. Make sure that you like our channel and subscribe if you shall wish. But I do want to say this. Our post-race show eclipsed almost 500 people, growing 5 times from what we did after the Daytona show. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm sure that was just all Rowdy fans. Maybe not. But again, want to thank you for that. And then at the same time, we grew over 100 subscribers at the same time. So again, thank you all for participating with us. We're so glad that you're here. And we hope that you're entertained at least for the next 30 to 50 minutes. So
I think Joe has promised Vegas Showgirls after on the post-race show.
Yeah.
And he's gonna get Vegas Showgirls from Caesar's Palace.
You're absolutely right, Steve. I am.
Okay.
I would actually just like to see Joe dance as a Vegas showgirl.
I can do that too.
250.
Let's get back on track.
I'll tell you this. If Kyle Larson wins this week, I will dance like a Vegas showgirl on the post-race show.
What if he doesn't go 5 laps down in the first 10 laps? What about that? Is that good enough?
You know what? Just open up.
That would
show.
be.
Let's
hey,
go.
It's levels. We don't want to go to the top too quick. You got to get levels.
All right.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Well, the first thing we do typically whenever we begin our weekly show is let you know what's going on in the standings. Last week we said pay no attention to it too much. This week you can pay attention a little bit closer. So as you guys can go ahead and see that. The way NASCAR does their standings, they make it as confusing as possible. So recognize this. Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch technically should be 1 and 2 regardless of the points because they have this asterisk, which represents a win. Unfortunately, Steve, I have to scroll all the way down. Cody Ware went from 11th to 22nd.
Oh, man.
Which is actually a more graceful fall than what he did during the race, 11th to last in 3 laps. So still a little more graceful. Austin Dillon and Kyle Larson still below Cody Ware there, Joe. So I think if we get a top 20, Joe has to dance like a showgirl. Hell, gonna win.
Can I make a public announcement?
No.
Yes, sir.
I don't know where you're getting your standings from, but if you go to NASCAR.com, they have a point standings and they have a playoff standings tab.
We're looking at the points, Steve.
Okay, but if you go to NASCAR.com and you get playoffs, it will actually give you the standings in the playoff format. So it will put the 2 winners at the top of that list. And then it shows the playoff points that include all of the stage wins and all that kind of stuff in it. It does jumble it up from time to time.
Yeah. NASCAR's Busch League. They make things hard. Kyle Busch League. But no, that's just an overall thing to look at. I wouldn't really pay attention to too much of this until maybe 10 races in. You kind of look at it, keep an eye on it, but don't really pay attention to it too bad. Oh man, a DNF? That's tough. On after 210 laps of 200 laps, he got a DNF. But that's the playoff standings. So if you are interested in that 2 weeks in, well, there you go. The only really sort of little news that we had is we talked about this on the post-race show. Martin Truex Jr. ended up losing a tire on the backstretch, so he has 2 pit crew members that are suspended. So they will no longer be allowed. I believe it's 2 races. that
2.
they are suspended for. Do what?
It is 2.
Did you say something, Joe?
No,
Okay.
yeah, you're correct.
So
It's 2.
Okay. I'm all flustered now, man. You guys got me looking at different things and talking, and I got all Twitter pated. So yeah. Other than that, no penalties so far. Kyle Busch still gets to keep his win. That's a good thing. You know, those are things that we have to worry about in the modern day of NASCAR compared to what we used to have to worry about. But the first topic we're going to talk about, guys, and I'll go ahead and share the screen again so you guys can see this, is that NASCAR, right before going to Phoenix in 2 weeks, decided that they're going to change the rules package, at least for short tracks and for road courses, or God forbid, street courses. So this is what they decided to do. As most of you guys know, with the Gen 6 car, really the best racing came on short tracks and road courses. Well, being that what we all initially thought this was going to be a road course designed car, at least that's what most people thought with the wider tire, you know, the H, or getting rid of the H pattern shifting, going to sequential shifting. A lot of us thought, okay, the best thing that's going to happen is now the performance on the road courses will be better. Actually, it got much worse. So among the changes, as you can see right here, is they're going to have a spoiler now, not a deck, not coming off of the deck lid, but a 2-inch spoiler. So that is something new, and that'll probably look really weird. They got rid of a lot of the underbody stuff that determines where the air goes, and those are the diffuser underneath. And I believe they changed. I thought I saw there was one more. Maybe it's just the part more of the diffuser, but I thought I saw that they did one other thing to it. But I guess this is all that NASCAR.com has. I was reading Bob Pockrass's tweet, which I think is more in depth than even NASCAR's. But what really changes in this, guys, and this is where we'll start our conversation, is it's a 30% deduction of downforce. And for you not used to that, the way that was put is that now the car will have less, it will be moved, the nose of the car will be moved less to the ground compared to late 90s and early 2000s racing. And for most of us, at least here on this channel before the next gen car, would think that was the best type of racing that we've seen. You know, that's when Dale Earnhardt Jr. was really popular, Jeff Gordon, and the cars were less stable than ever. More often than not, you couldn't go full speed in a vehicle because of the high speed and mix in the downforce. So I will ask you, Joe, to lead this off. Do you like the changes that NASCAR made, either because they've made changes just in general, or the fact of the specifics of the changes being made?
I'll tell you this, Ryan. I like the fact that NASCAR is trying to fix what they obviously saw was a problem last year. Every NASCAR fan gets hyped up when you talk about Bristol, when you talk about Martinsville and short track racing. That is the bread and butter of NASCAR, you know, especially for people that like short track dirt racing. You know, I used to go to Bristol every single year just because, you know, just the intense racing that you would get, the bumping and you know, so many cars on that track. It really made it a spectacle. And what we saw last year, other than the Bristol dirt race, which I thought was fun, and we talked about that on length, but I think when it comes to the rear diffuser, correct me if I'm wrong, they decided to take the rear diffuser off last year for the Bristol dirt race and experiment with that, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that was the only one that they took it off because they were worried that the thing would just end up falling off anyway.
Exactly. And the cars were going to have trouble on the dirt anyway with the diffuser on. But I don't know what this is going to do on short tracks or road racing. And you're absolutely right. We talked about this on this show last year, where we were anticipating and we were all kind of ready to see the first road course race last year. And the first one was a good one last year, because we wanted to see what this new car was going to do on a road course, in anticipation that this car was set up to dominate road courses. And I think the road courses in general last year, I think the short tracks in general last year, especially Martinsville last year, was just as boring as it gets. And that's something NASCAR can't have. And I like the move in this direction. We're going to have to wait and see what this will actually do to improve the race quality. But, you know, I'm glad that some changes were made, and we'll have to wait and see what comes out of this, I guess.
Steve, I know you've dove in and looked at the specifics of this. What are your initial thoughts with NASCAR making these changes?
On the plus side, I think it puts the car back in the driver's hands a little bit more by taking the downforce off. It's not like everything sticks like glue to the track and everybody has equal downforce enough to mask it up to drivers to some degree. But by the same token, that downforce I think created some pretty good road course racing. There was a lot of bumping and banging going on. I think it diffused, to use that term, the talent of some of the drivers. So in essence, for me, I'm pretty happy because I'm a Chase Elliott fan. And I think Elliott's one of the better road course drivers on the track. And I think the superior drivers will come out and start winning again. Whereas Elliott was not winning all of a sudden because of this car, because I think the car was more equal than his skill set at road course racing above the other drivers. I think ultimately the sport should always be in the hands of the driver. The car should be a piece of equipment the driver uses to show his talents. It should not be somebody just sits in the seat of the car and the car is the talent. So in that aspect, I really like what's going on. I agree with Joe. It just takes time. We're going to take time to see what it does. What we don't want is a parade. What we don't want is a breakaway of 5 guys who can really handle the road course and everybody else, 12, 14, 15 seconds back. So, but we don't know. But I right now, my vote is yes, I'm for these changes because I think it puts the car back, the race back in the hands of the driver.
Steve, we kind of talked about this off air, and I think that your first thing that you told me was you're glad to see NASCAR trying to evolve. And I think that that's what we've seen here more recently is a lot of times we say NASCAR does things to get in its own way. Now, we've talked about things that NASCAR does that has nothing to do with racing. Let me phrase it this way. Has something to do with racing, but not the actual cars on the track. Maybe where they're going, maybe what track they're participating on. But I think now what we've seen out of NASCAR is really, really aggressive on changing things, at least the product on the track, probably more so than I can ever think of. Because it just seemed like NASCAR was always set in this way of, nope, we don't care what you guys think. This is the way we're going to do it, and we're not going to change. Do you think NASCAR as a whole is more in touch, at least with their fans, with the product on the track as of right now?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I think they're making an attempt. Yeah, I think they are. I still don't think they listen to the fans. I think they listen to the checks that come in, probably still a little bit more than they do the fans who really follow the sport and want to see good, hard, clean racing. But I think the balance is coming toward each other a lot more. I don't know. I'm going to get egg on my face from you two both, or especially Joe. I don't know if Formula One coming into the United States is having any impact on that at all. We talked off air too. I don't really think so, because I don't think Formula One is going to be that big of an impact on the U.S. market. So, but I think it's making NASCAR maybe think a little bit about, we got to make sure we take care of the 70,000, 75,000 people that take the time to come to the track, buy the hot dogs, buy the cotton candy, the turkey legs, park their RVs at $1,500 to $3,000 a spot. So yeah, I think they're attuned to it, but yes, it's better than it was.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Ryan,
Yeah.
and this is for both of you, and this is just kind of thinking critically about these changes. And when we talk about downforce, how much is really downforce affected on a short track, say like Martinsville, where the top speed is 86, 88 miles an hour? Is that going to have much of a change in this car? Because I really felt that when we saw what we thought was bad short track racing last year, I really thought it was due to the width of the car and extending the width of this car, because it made it extremely hard to pass. Not that there wasn't room to pass, but I feel like this car probably it probably handles a lot better. And really, I'm taking this from SRX, and Tony Stewart kind of broke this down last year with what they attended with the SRX car. And a lot of thought or there's a lot of comparison between the next gen car and what they're doing in SRX. It's not exactly the same, but the more technical or the higher speed that you get with this car, it becomes harder to drive, right? The lower speeds that you are performing at that you would at a short track, this car becomes it becomes easier to drive. And I thought that was what led to the poor short track performances that we saw. So, I think that these changes might make a difference, kind of analyzing it and thinking critically about it on road courses. I think we probably get better road racing, but as far as short tracks, I don't know that these changes are going to improve the short track performance or racing performance that we saw last year. What do you think?
Steve, I'll go ahead first, and then you can rebuttal if you have any different thoughts. When it comes to the next gen car, the biggest thing that they did in terms of the body was they made it symmetrical. The Gen 6 car, the tire fenders used to stick out. Therefore, without a diffuser, the air would go around the car. And more often than not, with the low horsepower, the only way that you could get around a vehicle was going to the side of it, side drafting, pushing that air off of the car to get that person loose on the rear side, and then go around them. Now with the diffuser puts all of the air straight onto the nose of the car behind it. So what the problem was on a short track is they're putting all the air behind the car, putting it on the nose, and this car already has high downforce. It made it even stuck like straight to the ground, the downforce. So then it created this air buffer to where they're trying to get to each other. The car's hood is trying to get to the other car's rear, but because all the air is now on the front, it could never impact that buffer. And that's why we saw in short tracks, in my knowledge, parading, because it was just this air buffer that could never be passed because the diffuser put all of the air onto the nose. Now, if you look back at the cars that they alluded to, taking off 30% of the downforce, those were more bubble cars, and they sit this far off the ground. That doesn't seem like a lot, but in today's NASCAR, it's about this far off the ground. So taking that downforce off now, getting up to another car, now that bumping that you're used to, old school Bristol, one lane Martinsville, it's not going to take much now for a car to get loose or a little bit of pressure to hit that car. Now it's going to force a car to go up, and it actually allows that car to finally get to the bumper by removing all of the downforce off the front of the vehicle. Steve, do you have anything? Is that the way you understand it, or do you?
Yes, but that's what the fans want to see. They want to see the bump. They want to see the tap. Okay, you're not hearing my horn, and now I'm going to get you out of my way, and then all hell breaks loose in the stands. That's what made Dale.
I was just trying to rattle his cage, Steve. I was just trying to rattle his cage.
Wasn't trying to wreck him. Wasn't trying to wreck him. Just trying to rattle his cage. As Labonte sits backwards on turn one at Bristol. So I think that's and to Joe's point, that's what NASCAR is trying to do. I think is bring back some of the fun stuff, keep the car safe. Put the car back in the hands of the driver. I mean, if you got a slower car and you're blocking the one lane, the pathway, you're going to get moved again now. Whereas before they couldn't get you to move you. Right. So I think it's all in general, it's good. It's good for the competition. It's good for the atmosphere and good for what NASCAR stands for. Rubbing is racing.
Yeah, I agree. I think anything that you can do to go back to when the sport was its most popular, I think is a good thing. We've already advanced what we've done safety-wise with this car. And if we can have the safety of today's technology, but the racing of yesteryear during its heyday when everything was selling out, and like you were saying, Steve, you couldn't find a campground in the mid to late 90s. You had to renew for years upon years early to get to that. And anything that they can do to try to replicate that, I think is a good thing. And whenever I read things like, yeah, this car is going to handle like, you know, the late 90s and early 2000s, I'm like, that's what we want, because more often than not, it's in the driver's hands. And that's why we watch this, not to see everybody parade around in a circle, like Joe said, which was the worst short track race I ever seen in my entire life.
Me
We
too.
literally was on a show and said Martinsville is going to be so fun. It was 35 degrees and nobody passed for 500 miles. And we got on the show and we were like, I don't know. We led you all wrong.
It was so boring. They ran out of hot dogs.
They actually did. That's what I was going to say. They ran out of hot dogs.
Nobody watched the race. They
Martinsville
just
hot
stood in
dogs.
line for hot dogs.
Yeah, because
I
they were
remember
trying
that.
to choke themselves with it.
That was the big story. That was the big story of that race, was they ran out of Martinsville hot dogs.
Yep.
Which, for those of you that don't know, Martinsville has what's called the Martinsville hot dog, and the only place in the world you can get a Martinsville hot dog is at the track. I called Johnsonville. They were made by Johnsonville, I think.
They're about that color.
Flag. Yeah, they are. They're red. And I called, I think it was Johnsonville was making them at the time. And they said, nope, we have a license agreement. We can only sell those to the track. I was like, tell me where I can buy a case of Martinsville hot dogs. They said, you cannot buy them. You have to go to the
buy
track.
them at Martinsville.
Yeah, you buy them in Martinsville. That's it. So anyway, sidebar.
Which now has more acres owned than Fontana, as we now know.
Yeah.
So we will be moving on to what I thought was the most headlining and news producing segment of the week. And that was Denny Hamlin on his new show on Dirty Mo Media, talking about Kyle Busch and also a few other things. And guys, I'll hit a few of these points, and I just want you to let me know what you think is the most important and what surprises you the most. So on the show, Denny Hamlin said this. He said, with Kyle Busch wanting the number that he was wanting financially, Joe Gibbs Racing would lose money altogether, that none of their cars would make a profit. That was point number one that I took away. Point number two, he says all the drivers for Joe Gibbs Racing have no idea what car they're using week to week, and they could be using each other's cars. And they don't know it. I think that's bullshit. We'll get to that later. Then he said that Kyle Busch is a top 5 driver of all time right now. His 60 wins are like 160 wins. If you compared NASCAR from 1990 and earlier, it would be the same equivalent because it's harder to win now. And then the last statement that he said is NASCAR will never go back to higher horsepower unless it's with a hybrid engine. So those are the things that I took away from Denny Hamlin's podcast. I thought he was very open, but there was just a few of those things that kind of hit me, and some I thought was fluff, and some I thought was really, in-depth stuff that we could take away that I thought was newsworthy. Joe, what did you take away from that?
Well, yeah, I'll start by saying that I think the first 2 points that he made with Kyle Busch asking for so much money that every one of their cars or the entire team would lose money. I think that that's absolute bullshit. I think I do. I think that Kyle Busch initially wanted to stay in a Toyota, initially wanted to stay at Joe Gibbs Racing. I personally think, not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, that Kyle Busch was sabotaged. I mean, you heard all season, we can't find sponsors, we can't work out a deal. RCR or not RC, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, RCR.
RCR found a way. RCR found a way to get 26 sponsors for the season.
I have a new phone wallpaper every week so far.
He's got a different sponsor for 26 races this year, and you can't find one sponsor. That's bullshit. That's bullshit by beyond belief. Number two, not knowing what car they're in, that's bullshit too. That's bullshit too. Because if you take premier drivers like a Kyle Busch, like a Denny Hamlin, they want to know what car they're in, and they're going to get what they want in their car. And for him to say that's complete bullshit, and that's almost like walking up to a kid that you catch their hand in a cookie jar and go, "Have you been eating cookies?" Nope. Don't even know where the cookie jar's at. Like, he admitted to it without anybody asking. So that's
Yeah.
complete bullshit, and that leads.
That's what I felt too, Joe. I thought that was a guilty conscience
Right.
of exactly your conspiracy of that he
Right.
thinks that social media thinks that Kyle Busch was sabotaged, and he
Yeah.
felt compelled to say that.
Right. And that's like, yeah, but we didn't ask that question. I didn't ask you if you stole the can of soup from the store. You know, it's like, you know, let's put these rumors to rest that you're not asking me about. No, Kyle Busch wasn't sabotaged at the end of the season going into the playoffs last year. That didn't happen. Now, I will agree with him, and I don't know. I think 160 is quite a high number, but if you look at the racing competition from, say, 2005 till now, it definitely, NASCAR has definitely got more competitive than it was in the 90s, more competitive than it was in the 80s by a lot, and way more competitive than it was in the 70s by a whole bunch. And with 61 wins now, I would say that Kyle Busch, I think there's an argument for a top 5 driver of all time, but I do agree that 61 wins now in 2023, 61 wins in 2023 is probably equivalent to at least 103 races, maybe second all time, as it stands right now. So I kind of agree with that point. And I'll end it with that. But yeah, those are kind of my feelings on the talking points of Denny Hamlin.
Steve, out of all those things that I just mentioned, and if you need me to mention them again, I can. Is there any of them that stuck out to you? Some that you believe, don't believe, or would like to elaborate on?
I would preface everything by saying I think we all, and I say we all, let me speak for myself. I think Denny Hamlin's a good whiner and crier. I think he whines and cries about a lot of stuff, and he's very good at placing fault and blame on other things and thinks his shit doesn't stink.
Steve, I want to say this real quick.
Okay.
Out of all the NASCAR drivers I've ever met, he is the biggest prick, and I didn't even meet.
Yeah.
I was introduced to him from his posse, and he was the biggest prick I've ever met in my entire life. So I will just say that on a personal level.
Yeah. He seems he would be that way. He's not a guy that I probably would have. He's probably a guy that, knowing my personality and knowing his, we would butt heads quickly. And I wouldn't be invited to his house for Christmas dinner, and he wouldn't be invited to mine. And we'll leave it at that. Although I think he's a good race car driver. But I think there's probably some corporate fabrication of some of the things he said. I think it was probably some talking points brought down by JGR to save egg on their face. I don't put a lot of credence in anything. I don't think that he would have. Kyle doesn't impress me as the kind of guy that would trash an entire organization for his own benefit. I don't see him as being that kind of a team player. I mean, he's rowdy, but you look at how he's embraced RCR already and how he's gone out of his way to thank what's his name, the three car Austin Dillon. Every time he's spoken, he's thanking to almost ad nauseum now. Yeah. But it's genuine. It sounds genuine. So, and I remember a story they talked about a long time ago about Jeff Gordon had one frame that it was called Old Red One, or he had some name for it. And when he was driving in his heyday at Hendrick, that frame belonged to Jeff Gordon. Nobody could touch that frame. And he won multiple. As a matter of fact, I think he won Daytona with that frame, and they petitioned Daytona, the track, because that car, the winning car, goes in to the Hall of Fame right there, or the museum immediately. It never goes back to the shop. It goes in with the confetti on it and everything. I've seen them. I've been to the museum at Daytona, and I've seen it. And that frame went in, and they petitioned almost all season to get that frame back, and they couldn't get it back. And the minute they got it back, they raced that car again, as long as it stayed within specs. So I don't think that it's a blind draw on equipment for any driver. Every driver has a frame or a seat or a steering wheel or something that they claim is theirs. We know that. We all do that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's the same way.
I can't get into my wife's car without bumping my chest on the steering wheel, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I would say I hate it when my wife drives my truck because she never puts the seat back exactly. Same thing. So just, you know what? It's like, you're not allowed to drive my truck.
Yeah.
Just stay the hell out of my truck.
This would almost be believable if it was like Rick Ware Racing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we don't know what cars
That's
we
a
get
good
every
point,
week.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a
we
great
believe
point,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, because you drive
Yeah.
them like you don't know what car
We
you're
hope
getting
we
into.
have something fixed we can pass out to a couple of drivers that ain't been wrecked again. So no, I don't think there's a whole lot of credibility. And I think Denny did himself damage by coming on and talking like that and talking smack, because I don't think a lot of people are buying his shtick or his story, except for the hardcore 11 car fans. Other than that, I think the
Who's
rest
that?
of us are like, what a
Yeah.
whining crybaby that we think you are.
All 12 of them, all 12 of his fans.
All 12 of us
Yeah.
fans, yeah.
His mom
Actually,
has
I
the
think
Chase
it's
Elliott
11.
shirt underneath her Denny Hamlin shirt, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Well, let me ask you this, Steve, because you're the Chase Elliott fan. You wear the hoodie that you have every time to show that. I found it unique from two different perspectives to hear Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, who have never been Kyle Busch's teammate, come out of their way to say, Chase Elliott said, if you thought Kyle Busch wasn't good at racing anymore, I question your knowledge, which is like the most egregious thing Chase Elliott could say to a microphone. Like, he says stuff in his car once in a while, but to a microphone, that's one thing. And then Kyle Larson kind of said the same thing. Like, yeah, Kyle Busch is really, really good. And anybody that thought differently, they're sadly mistaken. And to me, to listen to that, I thought was very interesting, because it almost felt like, again, Denny Hamlin was compelled to say something like, no, we didn't screw him. And then but it seems like all the other drivers in NASCAR are like, no, he got screwed. What do you think whenever you hear your driver make a comment like that on a non-teammate?
Well, first off, with Chase Elliott, Chase, as he ages as a driver and gains more seniority amongst his peers, he's become more vocal, first off, than he was a year ago or even 2 years ago. You'd hardly ever hear Chase say anything that didn't sound corporate.
He had the personality of the guy at Weekend at Bernie's, the dead one.
Yeah. He was kind of like that. And so, but I without getting into Chase and Kyle Larson, I think the big story here is, and even from what Denny said, Kyle Busch gained a lot of respect for what he's done so far this year in an RCR car. Because let's all face it, none of us felt RCR was routinely competitive. Austin Dillon had a super speedway program. He could run and win there. And RCR, Richard Childress making wines, making money, doing other things. How much is he really still into it? But here comes Kyle, has a dominant car in the first 3 attempts at running this year. So, should have won Daytona. And now he turns right around and wins here. And you can damn well get bet when I pick my 5 drivers this week, he's going to be one of mine. At Las Vegas, are you kidding me? That's right up his alley. So, but I think that these guys want to talk about how good Kyle is and what Kyle's done in the 2000s for the sport of NASCAR. 61 wins. As Joe said, it's up there with Pearson, with Gordon. I live by the theory Richard Petty's 200 wins are meaningless to me, because half of them were won on, like I said, Saturday night short tracks with guys you never even heard of and never will ever heard of. He was beaten in his factory car.
That still had moonshine in the back.
Yeah. Well, and really, I mean, not to take anything away from Richard Petty, though.
No,
not to get off on a tangent, but
right.
Those 200 wins are more comparable to what you see in sprint car racing now, where guys can race in 3 different races in 1 week.
Right.
So
right. It would be like
that's what you got to understand when you talk about 200 wins.
It's like saying Kyle's got 200 wins. Kyle has 200 wins in NASCAR. amongst the trucks, amongst the Xfinity cars, and he's got over 200 wins. He's probably the winningest driver of all time.
Right. No, you're
He is.
absolutely
At
right.
this point. So
He
good
is the
bullet
winner.
for him. And
He
deservedly so.
is the winningest driver in Xfinity Series ever.
Yeah, he passed.
So-
He's the
Mark Martin a
winningest
long
driver of all
ago.
time. He has
Yeah.
more wins than anybody
Right.
else.
Yeah. And so I think that when guys like Elliott and Larson come out and they're younger drivers and they show the respect to Kyle Busch, I think that means more than the rant that Denny Hamlin exerted on his podcast, truthfully.
Well,
More
Joe,
people are going to listen to Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch than they are Denny Hamlin.
Yeah.
That's how I
believe-
feel about
I
that.
believe that. I think Dale Jr. did him a favor by getting him a podcast. But Joe, I will ask you this, because I feel like this is kind of the conversation whenever Joe Gibbs, Denny Hamlin, Toyota, all together, David Wilson, when they saw the number 8 cross the finish line, it probably was like, ah! So, do you think Toyota, now that Denny Hamlin has his own race team, went to Denny Hamlin and goes, when you do your show, can you please do some damage control? Because they are just wrecking us on social media right now.
Absolutely, they did. You could tell that by the tone of the podcast. Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Those the first 2 points that you brought up, that Kyle Busch was gonna cost JGR money. No, he wasn't. It's Kyle Busch.
He's going to make money.
He's one of the most marketable guys out there, because at the end of the day, you can think what you want about Kyle Busch. If you hate him, you can think what you want, but hate sells in any sport. And we talked about this a little bit on another show. If you're a hated person, you're hated for a reason, because you win, and that sells. It just does. What?
Joe,
Yeah.
do you know the famous quote by 50 Cent?
No.
The American poet 50 Cent, and maybe Steve knows this.
I'm not familiar with his
Is
work.
this the
Go
one
ahead.
Earnhardt said too?
No, he said, "If they hate, let them hate, and watch the money pile up."
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
That's
Earnhardt came out and said, I don't care if you're booing me or cheering me, as long as you're making noise, you know I'm there.
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly
That's
the
exactly it right there with Kyle Busch.
point.
You
Right.
can
Can't
love
believe
the
I'm
guy
the
or
only
hate the
one that
guy,
knew 50 Cent.
but you're either cheering at the end of the race, you're either booing or cheering them. Everybody in the stands knows Kyle Busch is there. So
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Sir 50's work.
I mean, I don't know 50 cents quotes, and I'm good. Joe, if you're like me, I'm damn glad I don't know 50 cents quotes.
Yeah, well, today's inflation, he may only be 33 cents now.
I know Toby Keith's quotes.
Yeah.
I know all of Toby Keith's quotes.
You
for
live
my
by
horses,
that, don't you?
Beer for my men and whiskey for my horses, or something like that. I don't
Oh,
know.
I thought it was as good as I once was.
Well,
Yeah.
Joe, if you don't complete your topic here, I'm going to stick my foot in your ass, because that's the American way. So go ahead.
No, and I, it's just simply summed up. The tone of the entire podcast when they were talking about the point of Kyle Busch was obviously orders sent down of damage control, because honestly, why are you even talking about that? Why are you, as Denny Hamlin, even bringing up those topics?
What do you think he's going to do? Talk about 23-11 not finishing the race?
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about something other than
Another
Kyle
one.
Busch, and I just think that that's complete bullshit. The only accurate thing he said is Kyle Busch is a top 5 driver of all time, and that his 61 wins today are like over 100 wins 30 years ago. That's completely accurate.
But
you know why he talked about him? Because Kyle Busch makes money, and by saying it on his podcast, he made him money.
Right. No,
because
you're exactly
people
right.
tuned in and listened to it. The same guy that Toyota said couldn't make them money, he literally brings up so that he can get viewership and listenership to make money.
And,
Well,
go ahead,
Go
Steve.
ahead. Well, let me real quick. I just say one sentence. Denny Hamlin's podcast has Toyota written all over it. It's a scripted thing they handed to Denny to say on his podcast. It came from Toyota TRD, because they are not the darlings of NASCAR anymore. They're in 3rd place in terms of equipment. Ford's up and coming. Chevys are dominating right now. And Toyota's sitting back there looking like a bunch of monkeys.
Yeah, because they let their best driver go.
Yeah. And you let their best driver go. Unbelievable. Toyota, TRD should have just sponsored the damn car.
That's like the Chicago Bulls in 1992 going, Michael, you're gonna
we don't
cost
need
us
him
all
anymore.
money.
We're gonna let him go play baseball.
Go play somewhere else.
Go play baseball.
Yeah, go play for the Utah Jazz or somebody.
We still got John Paxson. We don't need your ass, Michael.
Yeah,
he's
or
cheaper.
better yet,
Hi.
just go play for the Pacers, the team that we got to play 10 times a season. You know,
and that's exactly what they did. So.
Yeah, they did.
That hurt, but...
and they're feeling it already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, guys, now we're going to get into what I think is the most depressing part of the show, where we make our weekly picks, and that's because you guys are always battling for the lead up top. And I'm just JJ yelling, spinning tires,
Ryan, it's because we're picking viable drivers.
Yeah.
You got to get off the Christopher Bell.
We don't come out of left field like we don't come out of left
for
field
the heart.
This week, I think Ryan Preece is really going to compete at this track.
Yeah, I'm going to take Ryan. Yeah. We picked the guys.
I guess I'll mark him out real quick. Hold on. God damn it. No, but to update the standings, Joe, you're on top with I'm looking over here. You have 10 points. Steve has 9. You both had 8 last week. I had 5. So I'm down with 7. So Joe, I guess you can lead it off. Do you want to go first, or would you rather wait?
I always go first. No, yeah, I'll go first. I don't even care if you guys steal my drivers, because obviously I'm the best at this. I'm the reigning champion.
I think it's proven I will not steal your drivers.
Yeah, I'm the reigning champion.
We don't have to worry about that.
Even though the show has a new name, much like the AFL becoming an NFL affiliate, those titles still count, and I am the reigning champion of this. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my drivers. Yeah. That was a good comparison.
What are we doing? Four anywhere and 1 in the bottom 25?
20.
Top
bottom 20. Bottom 20, Joe.
I'm going to take last year's winner in October with Joey Logano. I think he's probably the only Ford running well right now. That might not be accurate, but I think Joey Logano's not running bad. He knows how to win. Yeah. Alex Bowman won here last year as well, but I'm not going to take him this week. He was the March winner last year, I think.
I don't need the 35 drivers you're not taking.
Okay. You're absolutely right. I got them written down here. I'm going to take Denny Hamlin. He won here in 2021. Kyle Larson has a couple wins.
Shock.
At this track. And then I'm also going to take Kyle Busch. I think Kyle Busch has 3 wins here. And if I'm not mistaken, Kyle Busch can also have the distinction of, if he wins this week, winning for 3 different teams as well at this track. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's pretty awesome. So I'm going to take him. And then my driver out of the top 20 is, I'm going to take Brad Keselowski again. Brad Keselowski's got 3 wins at Las Vegas. I don't think there's any reason why he won't give a good performance this week, as long as he can maintain his car for the entire race. I think he has another good showing.
Steve, you're in second place. Who are you choosing as your 5?
I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I think he's running strong. I think if he doesn't win, he's at least a top 5 car. I'm never going to give up on the 9 car. I'm taking Chase. He ran well. What are you laughing at? Who's laughing?
I said never gonna give.
Never going to give. I'm going to put my money on some Trackhouse Racing. I'm going to go with Ross Chastain. The Watermelon Man's going to come through. He runs good. I like him. I'm going to go with Logano. I think the Fords are strong. And where is Larson ranked?
It's not current. It's for last year until we get to the first 9 races.
Oh, okay. All right. Then
good try, Steve. I like your thought process, but no, you can't pull that.
Where's
bullshit.
The best driver in NASCAR ranked right now? I'd like to take him.
It just happened to have an electrical problem.
It is my outside the top 20. I'm going to take Keselowski.
Fuck. I mean, sorry. Beep.
So I got Keselowski, Chastain, Elliott, and Bush. And do I need one more?
No, you said Chastain, Bush, Elliott, Keselowski, and Logano.
Thank you, Steve, for the win this
There you
week.
go. I'm good. Did we match, Joe?
Do we match?
Yeah.
No, he has Larson.
Yeah, you
and
stole
he
Keselowski.
has Denny
That's it.
Hamlin.
Oh, okay. And I've got Elliott and somebody else. Probably.
Ryan, pick your damn drivers.
I've got Elliott and Chastain.
I just really want to apologize.
Oh,
Guys,
God.
you're going to see a behind the scenes look. I have the same exact drivers as Steve.
It's okay. Take them. That means you can't pass me. Take them.
That's true. Ross Chastain,
I'll play that game all year long.
Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano. We do not ever. We literally before the show, I say pick your 5 picks. That's it. We don't put it in a shared doc. Nothing.
Yeah. You know what? Last week I took Brad Keselowski and you dogged me for it, and this week you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to take him.
I took Keselowski last week, didn't I?
No,
you took his teammate Busher.
I took Busher. That's right.
And then I was like, oh, you guys took RFK, and then I took Eric Jones. Who shit. And
with legacy. Anything tied to the 48 guy, what's his name, Jimmy Johnson?
Yeah,
84 well, before we end up the show, I do want to thank you guys for the win this week as well.
We got this, Steve. F this guy.
Yeah. I think Larson's getting sabotaged by Hendrick right now. I
don't disagree with that.
I think they want Chase Elliott. They want Chase Elliott back as a captain of this squad right now, and he's their moneymaker, and I think they're sabotaging Larson right now.
Well, they probably don't know what car they're going to be in week to week.
You're right.
Well, I just want to make this point that Joe is Carol Yarbrough, and Donnie and Bobby Allison are here to whoop that ass on turn 3 and turn 4.
I'll fight you right now.
There you go.
I'll fight both of you right now.
Well, gentlemen, do you have any closing remarks before we?
So Ryan, you and I have the exact same picks.
Verbatim.
Good.
The exact same thing. Yes.
Hey,
Terrible
Joe.
minds work alike.
Joe.
What?
Goodbye.
Bye, Steve.
We're going to pass you up this week.
You think you're going to win. Steve, I am the Richard Petty of NASCAR picks. You're not.
You're going to win on a Saturday.
You're a big fat phony.
Yeah.
You're a big fat phony.
I won the regular season last year by like 230 points.
That's bullshit.
That's bullshit.
You at 3 a.m. you had a ballot of points come in.
No,
unaccounted for. Nobody saw.
Look,
in 5 suitcases, it was hermetically sealed.
It was so competitive last year that it was like 230 points. It was only 15, but back in 2022, it was so competitive that my points wins back then, comparable to today's standard, was like 230.
Hey Joe, you know what I'm afraid of
like
now?
A Steelers fan talking about yesteryear. I don't want to hear about this crap.
Joe, you know what I'm afraid of now?
What?
Ryan's making legitimately good picks now. Crap.
He's
we'll have to deal with him. He's like you and I. He's not going to be 55 points in the rear to us.
I think he taken JJ Yaley and things last year.
Don't you freaking dare!
I think we need to make a rule that at some point in the season you have to take a Cody Ware or a JJ Yaley. You have to take. We all three do. You have to. So now you got to pick what race you think they're going to do good in.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
No, that's
I got black flagged on that one.
Yeah, we're not doing that. If you guys have the audacity to take them, you get 5 times the points. I don't care where they finish. You get 5 times the points.
Oh, I mean,
so if you want to take him at Dega,
you want to take him at Atlanta, drive.
He can straight back to his hauler with his piece of shit equipment.
After 30 laps, when they run the gas out of the tank, and they park the car because he only got 2 sets of tires.
Hey, this is diesel, right? Ah, shit.
JJ, what happened? Ain't got no gas in it.
He just collected a paycheck.
You guys got to quit giving JJ Yaley such a hard
Rock
time.
Auto wouldn't even sponsor JJ Yaley. That's how
JJ
bad.
Yaley is a good guy. We should have him on the show one time.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
I'm
not.
for having him on the show.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of JJ.
I'll tell you what, if you want to come on here and get Comedy Central roasted by me, you're welcome to join Stuck in the Catch Fence. It will not be polite. It will not be an honest conversation. It will be me shitting on your employer for 50 plus minutes. And if you can handle that, that's fine.
Why you gotta? I don't know why you gotta give JJ Yaley. He's got really good hair too.
Oh my God.
Leave
just
that guy
hate
alone.
He
Put
does
him
have
as your
good hair.
background next time. Well, guys, if you want to participate in this highly thing that we put a lot of thought into, Joe is crunching numbers. Steve is sliding his abacus nonstop to find out what the best formula is. Feel free to put it in the comments. We'll put it in there and see where you stack up against us this week. And we can do that obviously every week. Just some more side notes. We will have a betting show for probably Saturday evening because qualifying is at 2:00, and it's really stupid to make a lineup if you don't know what qualifying is. Steve, would you like to give the weather report for Vegas right now?
Sunny and on the cool side. So tire utilization might be a little bit of a factor.
I just want your weather.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's way more
Let
than
me
no
do
rain.
this for you,
He
Steve.
said.
Let me
No
do this
rain.
for you. It's good. Fuck. It's gonna rain like a mother trucker this week in Las Vegas.
That's right. That's right. They're going to line up the animals in Vegas. So if you're
Right.
in the desert, be careful. But yeah, you can participate with us on that. That'll be coming out later Saturday. So after we get qualifying in, and then we will be with you on Sunday after the race for the post-race show. Gentlemen, anything else before we get to the checkered flag?
Great show.
Stefan,
Steve's sleeping.
Hang on.
he's
here.
checking weather. I guarantee he's on AccuWeather.
Checking
right
weather. Saturday, 62 and windy. Sunday, sunny, 60. I told you, chillier temperatures, tire wear, tire utilization will be a factor. The grip will be down on a fast track.
I just don't want
No rain
precipitation.
in the forecast, Joe.
Ooh, at least for now.
At least for now.
Well, guys, thank you again. Like and subscribe if you like the show. We appreciate you that you joined with us and keep growing with us. This has been Stuck in the Catch Fence. We'll see you next time.